the hills of East Oakland, the special edition shelter-in-place episode of Sound Waves. Today, I get the pleasure of talking to not just a great friend of mine, talented musician, organizer, underground music, I want to say legend. I think there was an article about you in the, I think it was a couple years ago. There was an article that said you were like a noise rock legend.
A noise rock hero, I believe.
Noise rock hero, sorry. I'm going to say legend.
Because we kept saying that I wanted to sing along to it, like a Jukebox Hero by Foreigner.
Noise rock hero
with stars in his eyes. Yeah, exactly.
I have Conan Neutron.
Yeah, hello. Sorry, didn't mean to hijack the intro there.
No, it's all good. Conan Neutron, I met him when he was living in the Bay Area.
As I did for most of my adult life.
He's a California native. I also got the privilege to play guitar in one of Conan's many projects. Conan Neutron, the Protons and Electrons. Am I saying the name right?
Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends is the name.
Secret
of the
Friends.
And then
I'm talking about the album.
You're thinking of the compilation,
yeah. Yeah. Which I went ahead and bought because I was trying to figure out how to like play it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier just to. I would have given you a download.
I know, but
thanks.
I'm always rocking my Conan shirts that I've gotten from you. It is I do wear that with great pride. Thank you so much for taking me on that tour.
Yeah, hopefully we'll do it again.
Meeting those people.
When there's
I got to bowl for free, which is like my favorite thing in the world. We got to play at Highland Park Bowl where I got to bowl for free.
Yeah, we played that show with Fatso Jetson, Mario Lawley's band from the OG Desert Rocker guy, and All Souls.
And All Souls, yeah, who after that, I don't want to say after that show, but maybe a few weeks after that show went on tour with Tool.
Yeah, they sure did. Yeah.
So,
but most importantly, you got to bowl for free, though.
I got to bowl for free. Then we came back to the Bay Area and we played at the Ivy Room with
Drug Apartments and Nocturnal Habits, which is Justin and Sarah from Unwound.
Unwound. I couldn't think of the name of the band. Yeah. So Conan has also this. We actually, what's so funny, I always feel like Conan is like a Central California white Jason because he tells these stories and we have a lot in common. Our moms.
Yep.
You know, I met Conan's dad, and I'm like, I see the resemblances and our upbringings and the shit that he says and the shit that I say, the shit that he believes. Pretty much, really similar dudes, except for musical tastes. We're slightly different. We definitely like heavy music. It's just a little different.
Yeah, I think you're a little more receptive to the various metal genres. I'd say where I definitely have more rockist tendencies, but whatever. I'd still say it's like probably an 85 to 90% crossover.
That being said, Conan is a musical encyclopedia, and I will put links on this to his podcast. It's a great. I got a chance to be on it, so I'm actually feel very honored because the list of people that have been on it is a pretty good list. Just recently, in the last week, he's had Bill Gould. He's had Dale Crover was today.
At the time of this recording, it was about 10 minutes ago. Yeah, or about 20 minutes ago. I guess.
Yeah. So he gets these great guys on the show, and
Steve Albini multiple times over.
Yeah. Steve Albini. Actually, was it because of Steve or was it because of Dale that we got to go see that Neurosis show?
Oh yeah. No, that was that was actually Bob. That was Bob Weston that put us on the list for what's it, Bob? Yeah. At what the hell venue was that? I don't even remember. It was the
Regency. It was the Regency.
It's by the movie theater. I remember that. I saw to the left there, and I saw that Shellac Neurosis show. and I saw Future to the Left with oh god, I'm blanking on their name right now. Lara Jane.
Jane's
Grace,
Addiction?
no, Lara Jane Grace's band.
Oh,
Against
fuck.
me.
I get the against is mixed up because there's Rise Against and Against Me,
Yeah,
and I get those against is mixed up.
Right, makes sense. It's fine. Anyway, yeah, that's I forgot all about that for Neurosis's anniversary show.
The anniversary shows they did, was it 4 shows or 3 shows?
Something like that. One of them was Converge, one of them was Shellac, and one of them was
Sleep.
Roach. Oh, Sleep. You're right.
Yeah. It was dope. Thank you, Conan. Conan's also hooked me up with people all over the country. I take it back, all over the world. So I can continue to tour and live my rock and roll fantasy. Conan, you got to go to Canada. Did you get to go to Canada, or did this shut you down?
No, we did the Canadian shows. Canadian shows were cool. That was rad. That was the first time I played outside the U.S. I played almost every inch of the U.S. before, but that was the first time I played outside the country, which Canada counts, especially Montreal.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, this is different. Toronto's like, oh, we're in an alt universe Chicago or New York where everything's clean, candy bars and chips. But other than that,
what are these ketchup chips everybody's so happy about?
Yeah, it just kind of feels like you're in like an episode of some sci-fi show. It's like something's wrong. Like everything's slightly off. What is it? Like I don't know. What's up with this candy? And you're like, oh, we're in a different dimension.
That's hella true.
That's Toronto, especially, is what I'm talking about, and most of the Toronto, that area, that province, kind of feels like just an alt Midwest East Coast vibe. But everything's like everyone's nice and clean and always apologizing. Sorry.
It is a hell of a lot cleaner. They were a little more. We played. I was just in Toronto. You were there this year. This was last year?
It was like October, November last year, something like that.
Okay, so we must have been there around the same time. I was there on tour as well, but we were playing in a very progressive crowds. So I got to see the true progressive side of Toronto. Everybody kept warning me. They're like, dude, Toronto is like, they're seriously progressive over here. I was like, didn't they have that mayor that was smoking crack? Like, how progressive can they be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Rob Ford. Yeah, baby.
But apparently his brother is doing an interesting job.
Yeah, I got a couple Toronto buds that kind of keep me appraised, usually through harsh invective and vulgarity of that guy's doings. But yeah, not a lot of people I know of that are fans of that petty despot dynasty, I guess.
the family way.
Yeah.
Now, Conan, I will say this about Conan. Conan also is very, very politically active on a local level and definitely on a national politic level.
I am.
And when you lived in the Bay, you would make I don't know if you do it in where you're living now, but you would make a list of all the
voting guide. Sure. Yeah.
But not amendments. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Propositions,
the propositions and the bills and the measures,
judges and shit. Yeah. Oh, my bad.
And he would give you like a voting guide for, hey, this is who's running, which I think is pretty fucking awesome because most people, when we think about voting, we think of the presidential election. Maybe you think about a mayor or a governor, but generally people look at the bigger picture. They never look locally, which is really where a lot of this conversation is heading, because you moved to the state of Wisconsin, and Wisconsin has been kind of a hotbed of Republican turmoil when it comes to crushing democracy.
Right, especially the last 10 years, which you got to understand, it's a state with a serious progressive bona fides and history behind it that was literally transformed by the Koch brothers and their money and their guy, Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin. And it's crazy to think about how much, and people talk about money in politics, right? Money in politics. Oh, money in politics is bad. Money in politics is ruining this, that, and the other. And it's true, but when you stop and think about the actual tactile ramifications of what that is, once Scott Walker got in place, he immediately started attacking the unions, started defunding the schools. Like, basically, he enacted what Republicans do generally when they get elected, which is consolidate a power base. Acquire power, consolidate power, and act as if it is not necessarily anything to do with governance, but solely to, put your will forward. And nowhere is that more prevalent than in Wisconsin. Whereas, as per normal with the two-party system, the Republicans were, going for blood, and the Democrats were, looking for civility and non-aggression pacts.
the liberal wing, the centrist liberal wing of the Democratic Party, right?
Yeah. Where they wouldn't contest every state house election. They had sort of like we won't go up against you if you don't go up against us. That kind of thing going on. Well, they gerrymandered the hell out of the state and redrew the districts to completely annihilate any representation of people of color, as well as progressives, take away any power from any of the existing leftist progressive power bases. And they did this systemically and effectively. And they did it almost without anybody noticing until it was over. And because redistricting happens every 10 years, guess what? They get to benefit from that. They get to push through their policies. And then when, myself and quite a few other people that worked very hard to get Scott Walker the hell out of there and get his replacement, the current Democratic governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, who, they talk about, Republican governor versus generic Democrat. Mm-hmm. He's about as close to generic Democrat as you can actually get as a real life human being. Nice enough fellow, but just not really Mr. Personality. His lieutenant governor, Mandela Barnes, is great. But we got Evers in there, and we got Walker out. The legislature, both the houses, are controlled by Republicans. One of them is pretty much super majority. And what they did is what a lot of Republican legislatures that have a Democratic governor do in states is they stripped away the governor's powers. So this happened in North Carolina. They started doing it in Kentucky just recently. What it is they give the equivalent of the state house unitary executive, right? You sink everything into the executive and you let them do a bunch of stuff and you get your guy in there.
Yeah.
And when your guy is not in there, then you quickly roll it all back so that like the person you don't agree with doesn't get to do anything. So they went overboard and spent a whole lot of time taking away Tony Evers' powers because they knew that he would, do things like call for
mail-in ballots
and for districts that actually represent the voters and all the things that like would make for a more equitable society and things that the people want but that would actively hurt the Republican legislature's power base. So on that, one of the most important things you got to understand with the motivation for Wisconsin was the absolute packing of the Wisconsin judiciary with right-wing zealots. And when I say right-wing zealots, I'm talking about people that are like the state house equivalent of your Kavanaughs. And people that like they claim to only call balls and strikes or whatnot. But what they're really doing is judicial activism of the highest order. And they do it systemically as well. And only towards one side, which is the more authoritarian side, restricting voting rights, as for instance, making it more difficult for people to vote. So one of the things that they did, and there's a great clip, one of the legislators from Wisconsin, they talk about they enacted this really odious voter ID law. And most voter ID laws are odious because what they're doing is they're throwing up a stumbling block to make it more difficult to vote. And since the Voting Rights Act was timed out and was not renewed by the U.S. Congress, that used to be illegal. But what they've done is they found ways to get around the system. What they do is they make it more difficult to vote, basically trying to make it so that anyone who is, well, the claim is for illegal aliens, right? But it's really like for students, it's for people that are on the margins, it's for poor people. They're trying to do the thing where they're making it more difficult for people that do not vote their way to vote.
Now Milwaukee is a highly gerrymandered city.
Oh, you better believe it. So one of the differences between like Oakland and Milwaukee have a lot in common. There's a lot in common between the cities, but going from one of the flat out most integrated cities in the United States of America to one of the most segregated was
literally
crazy. No, it is literally block by block, but it is nuts that the level of disengagement on the north side of Milwaukee, where basically they have all the black people, is crazy. Like people, I mean, the people there have no hope. They feel abandoned, and they have every reason to. There's no representation for them. You know, there's a very good the U.S. House representative from Milwaukee. She's awesome, but when it comes down to on a local level, they don't have any voice in the community, and one of the reasons why is because they did the thing where there's like, oh, this is, you know, these districts will be where the blacks get to have their representative. You know, like from the old South, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they get to like, and there's going to be like 5 districts over here. It's like, okay, well, the sum total of that population is like 1/5 of like what that neighborhood you just made as its own state senate district be. But it doesn't matter because they were doing it on purpose, and they had people on board with the project to do that as like not as like, oh, here's a thing that we can do now. It was like, no, that was part of the plan. Like this is planned out. And this is what the problem with what Democrats do when Democrats seize power is try to return to norms and bring about civility and governance. What Republicans do is consolidate power.
Mm-hmm. And they've been real good at it.
And if any governance happens, it's going to be by accident, practically. But what they're doing is to consolidate power, and they've done it systemically. And it's like Lucy and the frickin' football with Charlie Brown that the Democrats keep falling for this literally every time. And I guess we're falling for it again. I don't know, because I mean, like Joe Biden wants to return to normalcy. That's never going to happen. It's gone.
Do you think the Democratic Party in general, and I'm not talking about its constituents, I'm talking about the party in general, the DNC. Do you think they're happy with being the opposition party?
I think most of the people within the Democratic Party leadership are very ill-suited toward being an actual opposition party because they don't actually want to oppose. And one of the reasons why is because they're drunk on the idea of like this West Wing universe where everybody believes in like, you know, the greater good, and like we're just one inspiring speech away from everybody coming together. It's just not true.
The hashtag. So I went on a Twitter rampage today. I don't know if you saw, and I was just calling out, and I don't know why. Maybe because it was just a slow day at Alyssa Milano and Ellen.
Christ.
Ellen did a show from her home, and she said she felt like she was in prison because she was quarantined, shelter in place, whatever you want to say. And, you know, I thought, you live in a fucking mansion. You're Ellen. You have literally the biggest television show in daytime television. I'm pretty sure your house is badass and is filled with badass shit that you probably haven't seen or touched. Get the fuck out of here telling me about how it's like prison.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? You know who would give you an itemized list of why that's not like prison? People that are in prison. Man, we were talking about Billy Gould being on Protonic Reversal. Like we were talking about, you know, kids being bored or whatever in isolation. It's just like, man, try being like stuck in a van without the internet or like cell phone. It's like, you know, it's like
right.
It's easy. You got all the entertainment in the world. You got a vast repository of human knowledge all available to you. Come on, man. This is like, You can do a lot worse, But when it comes time to the Democrats, and it comes down to the fact that the Democratic Party was ascendant and powerful for a very long time. And when power was taken away by the Reagan Revolution, they never recovered from it. They're still reacting the same way. And they're reacting in a way that they feel they have to trick people into voting. That the natural state of the voter is a center-right conservative, which is not true, which is not naturally out.
Well, that was the Clinton response, right, to the Reagan Thatcher war on government, was to have a slightly less war on government.
Right. Yeah. We're the cool regulators that don't regulate. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Fine. Whatever. But the idea being that folks that otherwise
Glass-Steagall gets repealed during the Clinton years.
Right. So the idea that being that, like, okay, the Democratic standard bearer is okay with reforming stuff like welfare, the reforms equal sabotage.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's active sabotage of the social safety net, and that as a feature, not a bug. That, like, when people talk about swing voters, as we understand swing voters, what they're really talking about is this stuff that comes from Team Clinton, and by Team Clinton I mean Bill Clinton.
Yes.
Your James Carville, your Paul Podolak, and whatnot, that identified key demographics that they felt that they could persuade over to their side, running what's known as a persuasion election, as opposed to a base plus election where you double down your principles and your integrity, you stand for something, and you bring your people out, assuming that you can't control the other side bringing their people out. You want to bring more of your people. Well, what the Democratic leadership especially has forgotten about is that the base is something that you should respect, and in some cases fear. And the Republicans did a very good job of learning this with the Tea Party, because the Tea Party scared the living crap out of them. Because if you didn't vote the quote unquote right way, you would get like a Tea Party challenger who would. And
now, wasn't the Tea Party actually part of? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but on that same Tea Party tangent, weren't they kind of a Koch brothers creation, if you will?
And that's what I was getting at. Is that while they presented as a grassroots movement, they had financial backing because their goals were not necessarily that of the Koch brothers and others along those lines, but it was co-opted as a tool and an instrument to provide that change, which comes back to originally what I was talking about how Scott Walker came to pass and how the Democrats it just didn't see it coming. And they didn't see it coming because they took the base for granted. They did not serve the needs of the base. They were not interested in serving the needs of the base. And they were drunk on the idea of this functional, comity and respect, and inspiring speeches being enough to get you. But the fact is, it just wasn't, and you had a lot of people that otherwise used to vote Democrat that would be like, well, these guys are a bunch of jerks. I don't care about them, and then you have people starting populist and nativist rhetoric and trying to find an other to blame that on. So fast forward a bit, and when you have enough money that you can basically buy these seats in Congress because people are just not competing for them everywhere that they should. Like, you have to show up. First thing you have to do is you have to show up.
Yes.
If you don't show up, you ain't going to win because you didn't show up. Well, I mean, Wisconsin went for Trump in 2016. One of the reasons why is Clinton did not show up, period. After she lost.
Literally.
No, she never showed up once in the state.
Like literally didn't come to the state, yeah.
And they decided, Robbie Mook decided to run up the popular vote total in Los Angeles instead because they wanted to have a show of force with a really high popular vote total. Well, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Great, good on you.
Didn't she not show up in Michigan as well?
Michigan as well. And there was a severe depression of votes from Milwaukee, and especially from people of color within Milwaukee who flat out were like, there's nothing here for me. And that's understandable because there hasn't been anything from the Democratic Party other than just, oh, well, they're going to vote our way. What are they going to do? But for the
empty rhetoric.
Yeah.
That's what I found it interesting, and I don't know if you've been following this as much, but I want to say like late last year, I felt like there was this conversation about reparations, and then
Marianne Williamson brought it up. A few candidates brought it up. Yeah.
The one knock that Black people were having on Bernie Sanders was that he wasn't for reparations because he looked at his campaign in 2016. It's like, well, there's all these kind of systemic changes that I want to do, and reparations really wasn't on the plan. And people were like, well, I'm not really going for Sanders because he's not for reparations. I'm like, well, who has even had reparations on their platform in my lifetime? I can't remember Barack Obama. Hey, I'm all for reparations. Let's tell Whitey to give us some of that land and these 40 acres. I don't remember him saying that. I don't remember Bill Clinton playing that saxophone on Arsenio Hall show. Yeah, I'm going to give all these.
Everyone, not so much.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Like, no one I remember in the Democratic Party has ran on a platform of "I'm going to take care of you coloreds." So,
well, and you're bringing it up because you're talking about weaponizing "quote unquote" wokeness to work against progressive goals.
Oh my God!
Which is something that, if you would have told me back in 2014, 2015, that would not only be something that happens, but something that is commonplace, it would have blown my mind because I never could have expected that. And it's crazy.
We're seeing it right now. I'm sorry. Yes, we're seeing it with Biden and this whole everybody was Me Too until Joe Biden gets a little rape allegation, and now it's like, well, we have to vet this witness.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It's believe women unless it's against our guy, in which case, oh no, trust but verify. Okay, well, hold on. Like, this is like literally not even being covered in the mainstream news. And they're purposefully avoiding it. And the thing is, it's not the first time that she brought this up to. This is something that when the old I'm blanking on her name, but in Nevada, the woman who was running for lieutenant governor, I can't remember, the hair sniffing allegation when that first came out.
Yeah. Yes, the hair sniffing allegation. Yeah.
I'm sorry that I can't remember the woman's name right now. It's been a long day, but Tara Reid tried to come out at the same time, and they ignored her then too. And like, that just goes to show you that, I mean, entrenched power serves entrenched power. No one is going to give up power without a fight. Why would they?
No, you're right. I agree with you.
And acting like we can flip a switch and get the correct candidate in there, and then suddenly everything's going to be hunky-dory and we'll sing Kumbaya and dance off into the sunset together is utterly ridiculous. And one of the things that bothers me so much is the idea of trying to take actual things that are important and reducing them into talking points to be used against good faith actors. So let me put it this way. I understand, especially where Bernie in 2016 was coming at it from, because he's coming at it from a place of, I believe in equal rights. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a level playing field for everyone that solves, a lot of problems that we have with, racism and sexism. We're going to make a level playing field for all. And of course, a level playing field feels like oppression when you come from a place of privilege, right?
Yes.
And that's what a lot of people didn't understand, because the whole idea of privilege has only come into popular consciousness maybe in the last 5 years. Maybe.
I agree.
At least within my lifetime. But the thing with that is that And Cornel West said it far more eloquently than I ever could in my 10 years. But he's been right on every issue in regards to, whether it's race relations, whether it's an equal right amendment. Like, he's been right on every issue his entire lifetime. And
yeah.
Advocated.
He called him a thermostat. Yeah.
And but the fact is, and to bag on the man because he doesn't use like the right term, and then it's almost like so I'm not a big fan of pedantry. Being a pedant where someone's like, aha, you used the wrong word here, and that means something else. I was like, well, I got another word for you. I've got two of them. The second one is you, and the first one starts with an F. Want to fill in the blanks?
That's what's happening to all these people. Like I saw Brianna Joy Gray. We had a whole kind of podcast about what happened to Bernie and Brianna Joy Gray within the same week. Brianna Joy Gray, who's like Bernie's press secretary, she was a lawyer and was a journalist with The Intercept for a minute. Love her work. Really smart woman.
She's badass, yeah. And she's just thinking, she used the wrong word, so like, well, let's all pile on her because like, are you kidding me?
I don't get. First of all, I don't understand, and maybe this is just me not bright enough, or I just haven't been in the right group of people for long enough. I don't know. I don't understand why. First and foremost, everybody wants to pile on this woman like she's some sort of sellout. First of all, I don't get that. Second of all, I don't get why people are defending Kamala Harris, who hasn't really defended Black people as a prosecutor, as a senator. She just hasn't done much, in my opinion. All these people jumping on Brianna and then seeing Whoopi Goldberg jump on Bernie to drop out because people want Joe Biden. And then on top of all that, every time Joe Biden talks, he's stumbling all over himself. He's never really been the most eloquent public speaker. He's just been a politician. He plays politics. He knows how to make the right deals to get things that he needs happening. Be it wars in Iraq, be it crime bills. He knows how to do that and has done it for his whole time in office. Public speaking, not so much.
Yeah, right. Well, and you bring up a couple points, and like remember that I guess at least he's on suspension. Jason Johnson was benched from MSNBC after, what did he say about Brianna?
The land of misfit black girls.
Yeah. Which is like, dude, really? Where it's like there's this visceral, like absolute despising of people from the progressive movement that are coming, that don't fit this idea of like this woke culture, where it is like when people talk about cancel culture and things like that, it's usually assholes, and it's usually people they're like, no, I just want to be bigoted. Why don't you let me just be bigoted?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that.
But there's a grain of truth to folks that in bad faith will try to marginalize people that don't use the correct terms, or they use the correct terms but against people that they don't want to have questioned or brought into the light, and they will use wokeness as a weapon. And the perfect example is someone, and I can't believe we're talking about Alyssa Milano as if she's an elected representative, by the way. The fact that, like, Alyssa Milano's, he got right in the middle of like Me Too and like made a big show of it, and like was very, very present and like demonstrably present for all of it. And then when it comes time to something about like her guy, that doesn't matter. We need to you need to verify that. Oh yeah, really? So, okay. Like, what's different now? Let me see.
Dude, think about this for a second. Conan, trip off this for a minute, and this will totally fuck up everybody's day. Take Alyssa Milano, who people can say what they want to say about why she's important. She has a voice, and she has a very large platform, and people listen to her. Kim Kardashian, juxtapose those two people. I am not a fan of either woman, but I think I can give them pretty honest critiques. And I've had crushes on them both, and it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of love.
Yeah, I know. As red-blooded American male, I understand. Yeah.
Kim Kardashian takes that platform, even though I don't agree with how she does it. She gets a woman released from prison because she goes, "Hey, I watched this documentary, and I think this is wrong. I'm going to go talk to my buddy Donald Trump."
Which may be one of the only good things Donald Trump has done in his presidency.
But yeah, that was it, because he wanted to see some ass in the White House.
Yeah.
And so then she goes even further and says, "I don't really understand law, so I'm going to go to law school to understand law because I think it's kind of messed up that these people are in prison." Now, she may be doing this for some other selfish reasons. Does she embody consumer culture that I don't really like? Yeah, of course. I don't really dig a lot of the stuff her husband says post 2005. I get that. But the fact is, I hate to say it, or people may not like to hear it. I don't really hate to say it. Kim Kardashian is way more woke than Alyssa Milano, but Alyssa Milano gets all the props from the kind of centrist Democratic media for being like queen woke.
Well, totally. And again, it just goes to show you that there's been a lot said, and I want to be careful about too many digressions. I want to be careful about what I say too. But like, as much as I respect and admire Elizabeth Warren and her career, I've been a fan of her literally since before she ever was in the Senate. The Elizabeth Warren for president campaign, well, first of all, was terrible. It was run terribly. It appealed to no one. She, got no better than third place in like all the races that she ran. Got absolutely trounced in her home state. And this idea that somehow she was the superior candidate blows my mind. But what it is a lot of it was representation. And I get the desire for just wanting to have, strong, powerful female representation. If I flicked the switch and made Elizabeth Warren president, hell yeah, where's the switch? I'm on. It's great.
That switch is called a time machine in 2016 was that moment.
That was her chance, exactly.
She fucked that off. That's on her.
Where I'm getting with that, and it isn't just like this the Warren campaign, and it's not even really this. It's just that I think that a lot of people are surrounded by this confirmation bias bubble of people that just all kind of believe what they believe. Like they're all relatively the same income level, they have the same interests, maybe they live in the same places, and they're like, oh yes, well clearly, Elizabeth Warren is the best candidate. And a lot of those people are newscasters too. Like a lot of people on the news and the media feel that way also. So that when reality came crashing down, where it's like, oh yeah, the working class don't give a damn about big structural bailing. Like, nobody knows what that is. You're gonna expand your band's in jokes and like try to run on that because that's just as good, man. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't like it. Think it's interesting, funny, or like good. And I know all about it. I'm like, God, that's stupid. Like, why are they? It's just like it's as if the Glee Club all got together and tried to form a government.
Damn. Wait a minute. I got a thing. This is all I got for that. But actually, I have this too. You knocked that shit out of the park with that one. Because that's pretty fucked up.
I mean...
But it's true. It's true as fuck. No, it's true as fuck.
They earned it. Prove me wrong, Like, I don't want to be right about that. Like, it's just that the idea... The talk about a manifestation of privilege, that whole, Elizabeth Warren doesn't owe anybody anything. Really? Well, okay. If you actually care about even a quarter of the stuff that she advocates for, then, like, time to act is, like, now. And, of course, that time is now past. But, like, the fact that people were, like, it was something that I guess I underestimated the American public, and especially people that Warren's thirst for actual change, rather than have the person that they want to have be the president. And what's funny about that is Bernie Sanders' campaign has been tarred and feathered many times over for being a cult of personality, when really he's a manifestation and an avatar of movement progressivism.
Yeah,
that's what people don't understand. He's the masthead.
He's the next step after Occupy.
Right, exactly. And it happened. It took a long time to get there. It wasn't like the Tea Party where there was like millions to build an infrastructure and whatever. Like it happened organically. And as we're standing right now, it doesn't look like we're going to get to the mountaintop. But I mean, it's not a cult of personality. And
the war that has been waged on him, though, which has been pretty interesting for me to see, and I can't remember seeing anything like this in my lifetime. Maybe, we're about the same age. Maybe you remember. I can't remember powers consolidating like we've seen the DNC do to make sure that Bernie isn't in the race. You have like Wisconsin holding an election in the middle of a pandemic where people can't be next to each other, which is a big reason why that is the reason why I wanted to have you on the show. What was the atmosphere like? Because I know you are part of a kind of a pro Bernie group of people out there in Wisconsin. Sure. What is that atmosphere like right now with coronavirus and the shelter in place, and then one polling station in all of Milwaukee? Am I saying it right, or 5?
Yeah, so there's 5 within Milwaukee, which is insane because
there was 180 last election.
Correct, okay. And that's more like where it ought to be. To get to your just real quick on your first point, what I was saying about the post South Carolina pre-Super Tuesday thing, I haven't seen a move like that since the end of The Godfather. No joke, man. Like from a serious, from a political opposite standpoint, it's like, damn. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's not something that anybody in the campaign expected. And you're right. I've done a lot of canvassing for the Sanders campaign. I've trained people on canvassing. Done a lot of field work here in Wisconsin, which is, of course, a swing state. And it's so irritating what's happening. And to give a little background, Wisconsin Supreme Court, there's a very important election today. That there's a Scott Walker appointee, and there's like a progressive judge. And of course, these judges are supposed to be nonpartisan, right?
Yeah, that's not true.
We all know that's not the case. And Wisconsin has been very good in the special elections for the legislature, so much so that when Walker was still governor, he actually tried to get all the elections postponed because he basically got beat 7 times in a row by pickups.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one judge's race in Wisconsin that was a low turnout time. Most people weren't even aware that was happening. We lost that. That was front page news. Every news, cable news program had a block about it. But you didn't hear about any of the wins, right? And what it is because I realize with Wisconsin, there's actually this framing narrative in place that, the Republican takeover of Wisconsin, it's terrible. And for the most part, it's actually been overblown in the last 3 years. Things have changed. The tides have shifted. Democrats have gotten tougher, are running candidates in every case. But to have this race, which this is about a Supreme Court, a 10-year term for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, and the Republicans have their guy, and they want their guy in there. So they know.
Because there's a deadlock. There's a deadlock on a vote, right?
There's a deadlock on a bunch of votes. But yeah, there's
a big vote.
There's a big vote coming up. There's a bunch of big votes coming up. They want their guy to be in there. Flat out. That's what it comes down to. So there was a couple polls that were shown somewhat recently for a couple different swing states. And in one case, Joe Biden, as the presumptive nominee, led Trump by 2 percentage points. And Biden was up over 20 points among voters that were very concerned about coronavirus. And Trump was up like 45 points among voters only somewhat concerned about the virus. And then in another one, Biden and Trump are tied, and Biden was up 15 points among people very concerned, and Trump was 44 points among people only somewhat concerned. So basically, what they determine is if you're only somewhat concerned about the coronavirus, that you're a lot more likely to leave your home and vote in person. Republicans already have a huge advantage with people that are Fox News watchers anyway. So anyone if they're pushing that narrative of, oh, this isn't that big of a deal, this is like a Democrat hoax. If it would be entirely the fault of the Chinese or a failure of government. Like it's like drunk dad logic. Really, is what it is. The reasons the rationale change every 2 minutes, and it's like, Christ, you really can't keep a handle on this, huh? But Daniel Kelly is the guy that they're trying to get on the bench. It's a 10-year term. What they're doing is trying to make it so that their voters come out and the voters for the other side do not. So Tony Evers, who, as you recall from earlier in the conversation, I mentioned how they stripped quite a bit of his power away because they'd given Scott Walker a bunch of extra power. The legislature had done this, and they did this because they believe in this idea of the unitary executive and blah blah blah, et cetera, et cetera. He'd weakened the unions, really just enriched his donors and screwed over working people, which is pretty much should be on the masthead of the Republican Party. But the idea was because he lacked the power to flat out say this election is postponed. What there would have to be a declaration of a public health crisis, of which there's been a kind of partial declaration of that, but not enough to legally do that. Tony Evers decided to do it anyway because there's back and forth about they had enabled absentee voting, vote by mail.
Yeah.
No fault absentee voting. And then the legislature challenged him on that. And in the challenge, they tried to say, well, we're supposed to have voter ID, so we need to have someone witness. So I need you to think about the fact that
I saw you say something about that, and that seems so crazy to me.
Yeah, you're telling people stay 6 feet away from each other, don't go out in public, stay home, socially distance. But you need someone to look at your ballot and verify that you are who you say you are, and that person is legally accountable for that. And again, this is another voter suppression tactic, right? It's nothing to do with actual voter fraud, which is a very rare thing anyway. So on that, a lot of people didn't even get their mail-in ballots at all, which is a minor scandal that
it was like 1.5 million people didn't get a mail-in ballot, right?
Right. And then there was this time period where the mail-in ballots went out, but they didn't have this stipulation of having somebody there to witness it. So those votes are just going to be invalidated, which is back in voter suppression. And there's basically a passive purge, sorry. And then when you take into account that, so a city of 650,000 people, covering almost 100 square miles, and there's 5 polling places open. Which
that's insane.
When everybody is saying do not go where there are people, don't go out in this, and so people are going to get sick and people are going to die because of this. And also there's also a state measure. It's an anti-gerrymandering measure that, arguably it's not like it would solve the problem of gerrymandering, but it would put together a state commission for it. And it's a way to leverage between the governor's powers and what power there is in the legislature to actually do something about gerrymandering, or at least lessen the effects of what they're going to try to do next year. So we have over 2,500 reported cases of COVID-19 and 85 dead as of yesterday. And we got 5 polling places, and they're forcing pretty much everyone to come out and take their life into their own hands to vote. And specifically, they're doing all this because the numbers that they've looked at say that their voters are going to come out either way because they think that this is either a hoax or not that big of a deal. And so that's all the liberals that are going to be not showing
staying at home. Yeah. Have you seen any reports on numbers or anything like that for the primary?
I haven't because I was doing protonic reversal.
Gotcha.
I am going to check up on that. I also saw that John Prine died. John Prine died of coronavirus.
I did see that.
Which is a bummer.
Like as we were connecting on this call, he had passed away. And there was an article that came out earlier, either this week or last week, that said that he was kind of turning a corner. And it kind of tells you how quickly this stuff can come up and snatch you, which is so frightening.
Stuff changes quick, man. I mean, we had a tour locked and loaded and ready to go, and but the course of 24 hours went from like, oh yeah, well of course we'll go into it. Well, to like, okay,
yeah,
we can't. We got through two of us. We got through two of those dates.
All of us have had to change up everything that we had planned for this year. All the major sporting leagues are canceled. Pro wrestling is like, you name something, it's like, damn, that shit is all on hold right now for this.
Well, I think for a lot of people, it became clear when sports was canceled. It kind of became real for people.
Yeah.
But I think for Wisconsin, it became real for people when bars closed.
When the bars closed?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, people like going to bars here. It's a thing. Bar culture's a thing, and I think it took, like, people took it seriously, but I think it didn't, like, was like, oh.
So real quick before you go, I do.
Sure. And I'm sorry. Did I speak to the? So basically, they've actively disenfranchised people that have already put in vote by mail ballots. They denied an extension for vote by mail. They denied Evers attempting to postpone the election to June. Challenged it in the state Supreme Court, which one of the elections is up for grabs, as we established. They sided with the Republican legislature. Took it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, who ruled working remote, I might add.
Yep.
Who also agreed to uphold it, which portends ill for the future, unfortunately. And basically it means that the forces of voter suppression are going to be even more emboldened to do stuff like this going forward. Just much as if there were just like when there were no ramifications for stripping a governor of power that is in the opposing party.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, well, there's no repercussions for basically massively disenfranchising voters and making them risk death to exercise their right to vote.
So moving forward, what is the next step? Not just for Wisconsin. We'll start with Wisconsin, but for the country.
That's a good question, because I mean, I've been on the ground working for, 2.5 years, however much it is, and specifically working up towards, trying to take back the state, which we, got the governor out of there, so we got good governor and lieutenant governor and a good attorney general in place.
That's huge.
Which is yeah. That's don't get me wrong, but that's not like woohoo, it's over. Because the legislature holds so much power, and I under no illusion about what limited power I have myself, but I obviously, as part of the movement behind Sanders, I had hoped that Wisconsin would be in a position to make its voice heard and to be a key linchpin for Sanders' campaign going forward, which obviously is not going to be the case, I don't think. And it sucks to have 2.5 years worth of work erased over, what's basically a back-end power grab, taking advantage of a global pandemic that is putting people's lives at risk.
I saw some of the pictures of people kind of masked up in these long ass lines to vote. And I know we share a lot of the same friends that live in Wisconsin through our Kenosha connections. Mm-hmm. And some people I saw said they voted and were kind of telling people to go out and vote. I saw other people say, F it, stay home. It's not worth it. It's frightening to see people have to choose life or death to vote.
Right, and it's what it's what third world countries do.
Exactly. Exactly. Like we were supposed to have moved beyond this decades ago, right? And now I feel like you talk about the Republican power grab. I feel like the Republican Party as a whole and the conservative wing of the Republican Party, I'm talking about like the Kochs and people like that, are playing chess when everyone else is pretty much playing checkers.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be a fundamental change up in the leadership of the Democratic Party. And I'm talking about, there's been a lot of focus on Pelosi. And I get it. Pelosi's 5 times the leader that not Harry Reid, Jesus Christ, Chuck Schumer is. Chuck Schumer's like useless. I mean, like you could put your dog up in that position and the dog would do a better job. Like he's awful.
I agree.
The entire Democratic,
but he's offering $25,000.
Yeah. The entire Democratic leadership needs to be just start over. Just get rid of it, start over, and that includes Clyburn. Clyburn's a shill for the health insurance industry anyway.
John Lewis also just endorsed Biden today, I believe. Yeah,
and it's not just generational change; it has to be movement change, and it sucks to get so close and to be outmaneuvered this way, and that's kind of the same. There is corollaries to it with the post South Carolina Super Tuesday, that Michael Corleone shit. But the fact that these bloodthirsty maniacs are so soulless about all of this, they are literally going to put people's lives in danger. I mean, like, I'm an angry guy. I don't have enough rage for these people. And that has that's got nothing to do with politics. That's got nothing to do with my belief system, what candidate I support. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It's like, that's monstrous behavior. And it's monstrous behavior that was supported by people that literally get elected or confirmed because they are, quote unquote, only calling balls and strikes.
Shit.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the American judiciary as well. And
which is also somewhat frightening when you start to break it down.
Of course, because what it is it's like, oh, for people that campaigned against activist judges, it's like, you made the judiciary brazenly political. It's just that it's okay when you do it. That. All right. Cool.
I don't know if you've been following California politics at all, but San Francisco has Chesa Boudin is the district attorney for San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
And the first thing he did when he got in there was clean house and no more cash bail. And like I don't know if people really understand the power of having a public defender, a socialist public defender, become the district attorney for a major metropolitan city.
Which becomes a public defender in the truest sense of the term. You know what I mean? Like, not just like in judicial cases, but in actual defense.
And that's what I think people. I think on the simplest level, I think people look at politicians as, okay, these guys have my best interest at heart. Like there's we both probably know people that believe that Donald Trump wouldn't do anything to hurt them because it doesn't make sense to them. Like, well, why would he do anything to jeopardize my well-being? It's like, he just doesn't care, bro. Get down to you. You're not part of the thought process when those guys go into a room. You're just not part of the thought process. You're not a campaign donor on a major level.
No,
you don't own a corporation.
Well, and I think people get into this idea of, it being this like Legion of Doom thing where people are acting like, haha, I can't wait to screw over the American public today. No, they ain't thinking of you. Like, you don't exist. You are not in the conversation. They're not thinking of you. Period. That's all. And it's not even, and again, I know I spent like about 5 minutes getting my soapbox calling these guys basically evil bastards. But a lot of people aren't evil; they're just self-interested, and this includes people in elected office. And I think it's such a drag that people just misunderstand the idea, and like everyone wants to like look at things as a black and white issue.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it is a lot more nuanced, but that doesn't mean that everything's nuanced too. And sometimes there's, like sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, right?
What's that philosopher? I think he calls himself a philosopher that has that, it's always the easiest. It's never that complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, I'm not a big fan of that guy.
Yeah. It's a great, I use Occam's razor all the time, but I agree.
It's yeah. And there's something to be said about that when you talk about like ghoulish people like Trump. But when you talk about someone like Nancy Pelosi that's been in politics for 30 some odd years, I mean, I'm sure she had great intentions when she got in, and I'm sure she has great intentions now, but she's very disconnected from the proletariat at this point in her life.
Which happens, and it's one of the only, like, I don't think term limits are the answer, but for something like that, I get it, where it's just like, God, if you just lose all connection to like the quote unquote little people, like you just stop thinking about things anything other than abstractions, and that's I understand it. Like, it's just like you're not ever gonna. Why would you have people in mind that you don't ever interact with or see? Unless you act
never in it, yeah.
Unless you
never interact.
Try to find out what they're talking about.
Like I'm out here canvassing. Well, I haven't been because of the lockdown, but for Shahid Buttar, that's running against Pelosi, and he literally in them streets. You know what I mean? Pelosi hasn't been in the streets since the Reagan years.
Yeah,
and I get it. I'm not saying that it's great that she votes the way she votes, but I don't think people truly understand. Like, it's real easy to call people out and call, like, people have been ripping John Lewis a new one on leftist Twitter. And I'm like, you don't really have the right to call that dude out. Because that dude took some serious lumps for some basic freedoms.
For real. And
back in the day.
Talk about walking the walk. Yeah.
So I haven't been in Congress for 30 plus years. You know what I mean? I don't know what deals you make with the devil to stay in office that long.
Yeah. And it's depressing because, well, when you think about like narrative structure, right? One of the reasons I like Breaking Bad as a show so much is because it basically shows a high school science teacher becomes Scarface. And it's a corruption of the human soul. And of course, there's a great meme that is if Breaking Bad occurred in Canada, and it's just like a 3-page comic, and he gets checked out, and the surgery's covered, and the end.
You don't have 10 plus years of content.
Yeah, but like one of the reasons I like it is because it's a sort of documentation of like the corruption of the human soul. And as much as I'm not a spiritual person, I think it is true that like people don't just wake up evil.
No.
Everyone is the hero of their own story. And people do the things they do for complicated reasons. People do the things they do for reasons that another human being could not possibly understand. But that said, I think there's a very clear line in regards to money and politics that you get people that are quote unquote representing you that are really only paying lip service. And they will say the correct things and they will use the correct terms, but when push comes to shove, they will always not do the correct thing for the people. And that's
And that's the thing that I don't know if people really understand when it comes to, like, I think John Lewis, I don't want to say super complex, but it's not so easy to call him out, and people call him all kind of coons and shit like that. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't think you take the lumps that he took.
Yeah. John Lewis has earned the right to basically there's a tacit, unspoken "fuck all y'all forever" with John Lewis. I mean,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. Like he's maybe in the wrong for a lot of shit in a lot of ways. Of course, but to call him out like as he's a lifetime piece of shit, it's like, man, you wouldn't. I dare some of these keyboard warrior ass motherfuckers to do the shit that he was doing when it was okay to do it. Beat the shit out of somebody and it was okay. Like we see cats get shot by the cops, but think about cats getting shot by the cops. But this is before the Panthers.
Yeah, exactly.
The Panthers are a reaction of people getting shot.
Right, exactly. This is pre any of that, and this is like the OSG of the OG. You know what I mean?
like y'all, it's I don't know. But on that note, I don't want to keep you too long. I know it's later where you are in Wisconsin, but Protonic Reversal comes on how many nights now?
Well, right now it's 5. I'm doing one every night this week. I got Toshi's on tomorrow. I got Dwayne Dennison from the Cheese Lizard on Thursday. I got Jerry Casale of Devo on Friday.
Wow.
Which, like, when I talk about bands that are formative for me and bands that sort of help carve my worldview out, Devo is high in the pantheon. So this is not one I take lightly, and I'm very, very excited to be doing it. And there's been a lot of good feedback on the shows lately. Like it's something that people are responding to and getting some solace out of, and that feels good. You know.
And you're also on Patreon with the show, right?
I am. Yeah, that's a recent development. You know, it's sort of like if you like the show and you want to get the episode sooner, it's throw down $1 a month. Done. It's like $12, about the price of a record for a year. There you go. I struggled with. I did 150 episodes without any of that. By the way, my deal was no ads, no sponsors, no kidding. So, and all respect, all love for podcasts that do it another way. It just ain't me. And so, because I've decided internally that the show has a voice and is doing something that should continue on, something had to change. And that's the thing that has changed, is that there's basically a level of engagement that if you like the show and you get something out of it and you have $1 a month to throw down, you can throw down $1 a month and then you get the episodes. I'm not going to say immediately, but like, you know, within about 12 hours of when they air, and you'll get them at this point about a week before everyone else. Because let's see, at the time of this recording, 151 is the most recent episode up, with his Tim Midget from Silkworm and Mint Mile and recently Sun. And
I saw that. And
I just did episode 155 earlier tonight. So there's 4 episodes that are only available for patrons right now. That's about what the backlog's going to be. 4 or 5 back. I don't know. Like if I keep cranking them out at this rate, like it might be more. But the point of view is if you don't have the money for that or just not interested in doing that, you'll still get all the episodes. You just got to wait a little longer. That's it. It's always free. And it's the show that I would want to listen to.
It's a deep dive music show, man. If people are out here listening and they like rock music, Conan is a connoisseur of all things rock, all things music, I will say. And he does reviews on all music documentaries. He had a recent take on the ZZ Top documentary.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Not too long ago.
I loved it.
So he takes that same in-depth thing and he interviews these people, and he also interviews people that he's a bit of a fan of, which I also like, because when you're a fan of somebody, you get to have deeper conversations. You probably were at a show and you get that real good, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because these guys do interviews all the time. with major people, and you never get the I didn't know that. I can honestly say with your interviews, I definitely get the oh shit. No.
Because
they definitely don't get as political as this one. I talked to Conan for one particular reason. I wanted to get his political take on what's going on in his state because I knew he had something to say. He had a very long Facebook post, and I hit him up earlier today. I was like, dude, can we just talk? So it's like,
no, and I'm happy to be asked. I don't, I was doing a couple hits like these really early on in the primaries to give like sort of on the ground reports for different shows, and I was happy to do that as well. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm a guy like, so speaking to what you said about Platonic Controversial, I don't have anybody on that I don't like and respect, period. Full stop. Like, so if somebody's on the show, there's something there, that I engage with and want to know more about. And it's sort of like when the folks I have on, traditionally speaking, you're not going to hear on Cherry Gross. They're not going to be on Friendship. But they ain't nobody either. It's like somewhere in the middle. And I feel confident that the show has the kind of discussions that you wouldn't hear elsewhere. Part of it's because I also live the life myself, and I'm coming out from an informed place. It's a little more informal and fun than a lot of the shows. But I also think that like it's informal and fun, but there's a sense of purpose to it. And so that's where I try to go with it. And I feel good about where the show's at. I'm happy to talk about politics whenever. I follow politics like a lot of people follow sports. It's as crazy as certain sports teams do sports fans. And it's very rare that someone really actually wants the answer of, hey, what's going on in politics right now? So I appreciate the opportunity to.
Oh, well, me and you have talked politics on the road.
Sure. Yeah, no, totally. It's if you're in the van or Joe Cannon, then it ends up being like, Tony's like, all right.
That is true.
It's another episode.
Tony Ash, Conan's bass player, good friend.
Well, it's not like he's apolitical or anything along those lines. But I'm just goofing on him because it ends up being like, a back and forth through the van.
So Conan is very passionate about politics. Like I said, Conan is like white Central California Jason. So he's very passionate about politics. And I know he doesn't want to remember this, but before I let his ass off, I gotta bring this up. He was on that Beto shit for a minute. And I was like, nah, dude, he's not that guy.
Okay.
He was like, I don't know, Jay. He's gonna have more. I was like, he's not that guy.
Look. We need to clear a few motherfucking things right here, right now, all right? So, when you say I was on that Beto shit, no. What I was against was the people piling on him before he had a chance to state his case. I didn't think of him as a presidential candidate material. I was always kind of side-eyeing that. I liked him for the Senate. I always was basically Bernie first, Elizabeth Warren second, and then, whatever. Everyone else down below. A lot of people, I think, were in the situation that I was in where it's like, well, okay, maybe there's something there. I perhaps gave him too much credit because the dude came from punk rock. He came from touring in bands, playing in bands. And I'm like, oh, well, you learned something doing DIY that you wouldn't learn otherwise. And so, therefore, I was more inclined to give him the benefit of doubt on stuff before he made his positions known, which is basically generic as hell, youth pastor energy,
But he comes from some money, though. He doesn't come from our punk rock.
And I didn't know that.
He comes from a different punk rock.
And I didn't know that.
In all fairness, I did have some intel on him because I had to come from El Paso and did a job out there and met some people that grew up with him. So,
and I didn't know from that. And I think for me, I was more upset with everyone just immediately wanting to trash talk the guy's character while it's like, okay, well, I don't agree with that policy, but that doesn't mean he's a bad dude necessarily. You know what I mean? Like there's people that Kristen Gillibrand is a good example, and not that I think Kristen Gillibrand is like astounding or anything, but she had like honest to goodness movement. Like she used to represent upstate New York, and she had a lot of like upstate New York opinions, which is to say, you know, she was not right. You know, not that there's like necessarily a right or wrong issue, but she didn't hold a progressive position on everything. Then she was elected statewide. And in that process, she moderated her views to match the state, and she had people in her life that brought her along to come around to see that, hey, look, maybe that wasn't the right approach to that problem. I'm always going to give people a pass for that. Like this idea that like you have to be right from the beginning, and you have to be right about everything, and if you aren't, then like you are whisked off to the cornfield.
Yeah,
that's
bullshit.
That's hateful.
Yeah, and that's bullshit.
So for me, I was like, all right, well, Beto ain't it for, you know, for Medicare for all. That bums me out. But okay, let's see what's up with this guy. It turns out what's up with this guy is, you know, it ain't him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like even with the hell yeah, I'll take your AK-47 thing that a lot of people were super for. I don't think gun scenes are the answer either. I don't have an answer on gun violence. You know what I mean? I don't. And it sucks because I've actually changed my position on guns big time over the years. Because I used to be coming from a more perspective of like, well, what's the big deal? You know, oh, why do they want to, you know, because I didn't, you know, I was coming from a place where I wasn't dealing with gun violence every day until I started living in West O. And I was like, all right, okay, maybe there might be something to here. Take some guns out of some of these fools' hands. I'd be okay for that. But it's not that I always come from a place of wanting to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but I felt like Beto O'Rourke was a sad state of the fact that he should never run for president in the first place. He would have been a perfectly appropriate senator from Texas.
And he was part of that whole, like, we don't want to give Bernie any shine. Here's a Vanity Fair fucking piece on you that makes you seem like Obama 2.0. Like that whole thing has really been kind of blowing my mind too. If you juxtapose the 2016 to now, the way Trump just mowed through all the Republican candidates that actually were getting some serious press, he just made fun of them on this real like 7th grade schoolyard level.
Oh yeah,
and people never saw that shit in politics before, and cats just kind of ate it up. And on the same hand, Bernie Sanders was bringing shit up in these debates that people had never heard before. And Trump ended up kind of parroting some of those talking points and ran to the left of Hillary, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and it's a frustrating time for politics because it's like when you get like it's almost it almost hurts more to like be within reach, like within sight of the goal, and to have it fall apart in the way that it's fallen.
Yes.
Like it's
yes,
and it sucks to be like, all right, guess we'll get it in 8 years. You know what I mean? It's like, oh fuck.
And also on the level of like the local elections too, there was some.
When can AOC run? Okay.
yeah. I've seen a lot of people talk about like AOC was a 2028 or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an interesting Jacobin piece that actually kind of talks about that. Not necessarily AOC, but it was Obama's daughter, kind of explaining a dystopian future of what happens when you wait around for the second coming. Presidentially, I just don't know what's going to happen, Conan, because I didn't know the Democratic Party was going to consolidate power the way they've done it. And I didn't know a pandemic was going to come hit and Joe Biden was going to be 5 stages deep into dementia every time he talks. And Donald Trump is Herbert Hoover at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how he could possibly get out of this one, but
he can't.
He's basically He's basically been the Dukes of Hazzard the entire time, just freaking
call him a fucking boss hog.
yeah, just dump the car over the river like everyone's like, oh, he got away again. Like every time, man. Every time I'm like, oh, they got him now. It's like, nope, them Trump boys got away again.
This is the one time that Donald Trump has blood on his hands. Yeah. And if you look back at the Hoover presidency, I actually wrote a piece about this is Donald Trump's Herbert Hoover moment being coronavirus. There was a moment, and not necessarily so much the market dropping as it was the bonus march, which was when all those soldiers were supposed to get a bonus in the 40s and they were asking for it sooner. And then he had Patton and MacArthur just pretty much mow those guys down in an encampment. I believe FDR was like, he's quoted as saying, I knew it was over when that happened. Yeah. Because he was doing infrastructure projects. You know, we have the Bay Bridge because of Hoover, sure. The dam, freeways. And so he was an infrastructure guy. He just wasn't a give the people the money guy, which is literally what we're seeing now. I mean, you can go back and tariff. He had a tariff issue too. But literally what we're seeing now is the administration say, we're not going to really help the people, but we're going to help business, and business is going to help people. Yeah. That is the exact playbook of that 32 election for Herbert Hoover.
Well, and it's not sustainable, and it's not going to get him where he needs to go. And the only thing he has working to his credit is ostensibly a propaganda outlet that leads the news.
And he's even ditching them for OAN.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought, Conan, I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm telling you, guys, honest truth, Conan, truth, right? Mm-hmm. I thought that shit was The Onion for like 2 years.
Dude, it's so...
I didn't think that shit was real.
It's so post-satire times. You know what I mean? I know what you're saying. It's like, man, this looks like a Mr. Show bit. Like, what is up?
The production quality is shoddy. Yeah. All the women that are newscasters kind of look like they fell off of a porn set. You know, some people about me for saying that. I think it has a lot to do with the guy that kind of hires people, because all the dudes look nasty, kind of sleazy as fuck. Yeah. And watching that woman that got kicked out of the White House, the correspondents kicked her out, that said, is Chinese food racist, Mr. President? Yeah. And I was like, you are on one right now, lady. You are in the White House press room, and you over here on some silly shit. Yeah, and this goofy motherfucker is grinning at your ass.
Yeah, exactly. It's
no.
Well, I mean, so yeah. Do I know what's going to happen? Of course I don't. I mean, and I feel like I know less than I knew. Like, I felt like I had a pretty goddamn good handle on what was going on here, and I had a pretty good handle on what was going to happen in the primary and the way everything was going to go. And son of a bitch.
Yeah, I'm gonna make people vote in the middle of a pandemic. There's nobody could see that shit coming. And another reason why I want to do this show with you is because I want people to really understand that the administration is marching its constituents in a death march and giving not one fuck. Not a one. Mortgages haven't been frozen. Rents haven't been, on a federal level, haven't been frozen. Bills are still due. Landlords out here sending letters to people hollering about, rent's due on the 1st, and the government has several programs for you. Yeah. None of us saw this shit coming to this level.
Well, and it's so incredibly frustrating to suddenly have people having real discussions about the American healthcare system and things like UBI and stuff like that, and have it be like after it was relevant for the presidential election. And you know, there's a lot of nuance to it. I mean, it's obviously policy is not the most important thing right now, but when you have someone that's actively endangering not just the country, the republic, and the world, I mean, Christ, I just can't wrap my head around Joe Biden being the standard bearer. Him, it's like Oh, Christ, really?
I'll post on this link on this show. I'll post the footage of Biden lying in the '88 election about getting either arrested with Martin Luther King or marching with Martin Luther King. I forget what it is, but that was a reason why he backed out of the '88 election.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't really want to. I don't really want to leave it on that note. What I would say is that.
Thank you. Leave it on some hope.
Yeah. What I would say is, if folks that are feeling dispirited or just like generally bummed out about the state of like movement progressivism or things along those lines, take heart in the little things. Like Marie Newman taking out Dan Lipinski is a big freaking deal.
That was huge.
Big deal. And that's something where there's been a lot of people mocking Justice Democrats and other orgs that are basically primary and bad Democrats. And be like, oh, well, but you don't win any elections. Like, let us know when you win one. Like, whatever. Okay, fuck off. First of all, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Done.
Yes. Yep.
Secondly, Ayanna Pressley. Like I can give you a list.
To live. Yeah.
Like I can give you a list of all these, but like obviously it's a bad faith argument. But what we're happening, and it's not happening nearly fast enough, is we are replacing this old guard of the Democratic Party that either lacks the capability, or lacks the interest in fighting for the American people with a new crew. And it's happening. It's not an academic construct. It's not like an idea that maybe will come to pass. It's actively happening. It's not happening fast enough for my likes, but it is still happening. And that's something to hold on to in the darker periods. And, it's ideally we're going to get Trump out of there, and senile Uncle Joe is going to be president, and maybe he'll pick someone terrible.
Like I said, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. Let's not say that. Let's not will that into existence, as the New Agers say.
Well, yeah, but it's if we get Joe Biden as president, it's not going to be. It will be incrementally better than what we have now. It's almost worse because it's harder for movement progressivism to take a stronger foothold that way. But of course, the problem there is then you have like a Ben Sass and a Tom Cotton and Josh Hawley or whoever waiting on the other end that's going to take all of like the Trump circuit that was the fact-free, frame-based world, and just not have like the ridiculous narcissistic, childlike petulance attached to it. But anyway, that's it. Again, I said I was trying to leave on a good note. The good note is that like things are changing and
things are getting better.
And things are getting better. And is it happening fast enough? No. Do we need to find ways to expand the coalition? Yes. Do we absolutely positively need to tear apart the American media system? Yes. There's plenty of things that we need to do. And there are victories, and it's easy to forget that, especially, today I've been like so pissed like all day, just so angry because of this whole situation of like there will be people literally dead because of what these assholes are trying to do.
Yes, that's what they did. Yeah.
And we got people, good people, that'd be like, oh, is that election today?
Jesus.
And then,
The Death March. No, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave. It's a good note, but we have to understand. Thank you, Conan. And don't hang up.